I do believe Brendan Carr, head of the FCC, said, you know what, we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. And for whatever reason, ABC, Bob Iger, and Jimmy Kimmel, they want to do it the hard way. So, game on. Get ready for some fireworks, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Trish Regan Show. I am Trish. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share. Make sure you comment. I'm watching your comments here live in real time. We get a big story going on because Donald Trump has just announced, the President of the United States, that he's looking at suing Disney. Suing Disney, yep. And so Disney's gearing up for a big court battle. You know, they already did this. So this is like round two. This is Disney versus Trump 2.0, and I have a feeling he may get even more money out of them this time. I mean, you're going to see Trump with the biggest library that anyone's ever had, because all these companies keep slandering him, slandering MAGA, and, you know, free speech all you want. Let me just point out, there is a distinction, and I know this better than anyone, because guess what? I've worked in network television, and I have worked in broadcast television, and I have worked in cable television. I even work right over here. What do you know? In streaming land, which is way more fun. But I'm telling you, there are rules. The FCC governs broadcast television, and that is the reason why you can't go 3 years, Jimmy Kimmel, with only one conservative guest on your show. You know, that stuff catches up to you, and I realize past FCC chairmans never wanted to do a darn thing about it, but guess what? This is a whole different game and a whole different crew, and they are so willing, ready and able to go after Jimmy, to go after Bob Iger. And by the way, the shareholders are sitting there saying, please, please, please bring it on, because this is not a good CEO for our company. Not a good one indeed. Here is what the president is saying, and I quote, "I think we're going to test ABC out on this. Let's see how we do. Last time I went after them, they gave me $16 million. This one sounds even more lucrative." Now, of course, remember that earlier settlement that came from Georgie Poo Stephanopoulos on his weekend show. How on earth you put a host of a weekend show that's supposed to be unbiased, right? That's supposed to be a neutral show called This Week, their main signature political show. And you got little Georgie out there who's a former PR person. Yeah, former PR person. He was the flack for Bill Clinton. I mean, and you can go on all you want. Kayleigh McEnany, Dana over at Fox. Here's the difference. That's not broadcast. It's cable. So cable can be as opinionated as it wants to be. In broadcast, you're actually supposed to be something different. You're supposed to be right down the middle of the road. You know, go back to the 1933 Communications Act. I mean, the idea that you even have a former flack for Bill Clinton running your signature political show, that is just bizarre. By the way, the guy's like a total hog, because not only does he do that show, he has to do Good Morning America as well all week long. So he gets lots of airtime. Here's my advice. Disney, just put little Georgie, and he's little, believe me, he's very, very little. Put him on GMA, Good Morning America. Let him do the cooking segments. That's fine. And actually leave the politics to people who might actually be journalists and not so biased one way or the other. Anyway, Georgie Poo, he had to settle with Donald Trump, of course, because he called him some pretty atrocious things, and Donald Trump sued him for libel, and that resulted in a $16 million settlement. So now they're going back for round two. Here is a report, the original report that actually came just late last night out of Lucas Shaw, who's a good reporter. I used to put him on TV when I was at Bloomberg Television. He's got kind of the inside scoop on Disney, and I'm sure Disney has him to a certain extent in their back pocket. So they're putting out a message. We're ready. We're ready. It's game on. We're ready to take on the President of the United States in this. They are gearing up because they are expecting he will retaliate. Well, he said he would, right? He said, well, this is going to be worth even more than $16 million. This might be fun, because what they did was pretty darn wrong. I'll tell you this. He doesn't even have to sue them. I would say Erica Kirk should absolutely sue them. Turning Point should absolutely sue them. The Republican Party should sue them. I mean, because it really was disgusting what he said. And he said that this kid that shot Charlie Kirk was one of MAGA's own. Okay, so MAGA has every right. And perhaps Donald Trump, as head of the party, sees this as an opportunity, yes, to sue them. You know, of course. I mean, again, Erica, in her husband's, memory, should absolutely be able to do that. And the Republican Party with Donald Trump should be able to do that. And before you sit there and tell me this is free speech, blah, 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 I'm not buying Ted Cruz on this one, okay? Teddy, you never worked in broadcast TV. And maybe you don't know this. I know you're really smart. You went to Harvard Law and the whole bit. But I have worked at CBS Evening News. I have worked actually as a commentator at ABC World News Tonight and Good Morning America. I told you this, right? Georgie P would always put me in this little tiny chair because I'm rather tall, 5'7". You add some 4-inch high heels to that, and boy, he's like up to here on me. So I'd sit in the little tiny chair like I was a little kid looking up to Georgie. Anyway, so I've done that. I've worked at the Today Show, NBC Nightly News. I was an anchor on CNBC. I was an anchor on Fox Business, an anchor on Fox News. The reality is I've seen it all, and I'm over here right now in streaming land. So when I worked in broadcast, and this was a while back, this was back in the day when we actually cared about presenting both sides. We made a concerted effort to do that. I mean, I'd have like 50 people looking at my scripts. Okay, did she say this, and then that, and then this, and then that? And it was very careful. I mean, they had their biases for sure, and I can go on about that all day, but there was an attempt made to offer both sides. You didn't have to do that in cable. And so it's fine for Fox to go out and hire former flags from the Trump administration or anywhere else, but it's a little weird that ABC does that. It's a little weird that this week, their signature political show, I'm telling you, just let them do the cooking segments. Just give him a box to stand on, okay? He can do cooking segments and they'll make crepes together. Unbelievable. Okay, so the company had been anticipating this per Lucas's story there in Bloomberg. And this is even actually more remarkable. So they were anticipating this. Bob Iger was anticipating this. Dana Walden, whom he's courting as his successor, but Bob really doesn't court anyone as his successor, so that tells you she's probably rather weak just because he's never going to put anyone strong in around him. Just look what he did to Bob Chapek. Anyway, it says the company had been anticipating the Trump administration might go after its broadcast TV licenses even before ABC's Late Show host made his controversial comments. Okay, so here's a question for you. If you are a good manager, this is a test, guys, okay? Let me know in the comments. I want you to tell me what you think. A little test here. If you are running a company, big company, small company, doesn't matter, and you realize that you might be in a little bit of trouble over something because, it turns out, you're not servicing all your customers like the FCC expects you to because you're supposed to service those communities, right? And if you're not actually offering both viewpoints, you're really not serving the communities. If you know this, if you know you're in trouble, then don't you think you might be a little bit more hands-on? Especially after a tragedy like the country went through with Charlie Kirk, when you could see all the vigils happening all over the country and the young people crying their eyes out and people just so moved. Don't you think that you might pick up the phone and say, hey, Jimmy, what are you planning tonight? Okay, maybe you don't want to call Jimmy. I get it. He's such a cranky puss. Did we see this the other day? I call him Grumpy Cat. Total grumpy cat because he's just insufferable. Ooh, where is that good little video? It was him walking through the airport. Ooh, I found it. Here we go.
Honestly, just leave me alone.
I'm from New York, man.
I don't care.
How did Obama do?
Listen, I'm not interested in this. How many times do I have to tell you?
Okay. He's just a grumpy cat. So, Bob, I get it. You don't want to call the grumpy cat. You wouldn't call his producer? His associate producer? His assistant producer? I mean, go right on down the list. We can go down to the PA, but he had 200 producers working on this thing, and nobody actually had the common decency or good sense to say, gee, Jimmy, what you're saying is not true. And maybe you shouldn't do it because it's not true. And by the way, this is kind of raw and very emotional. So they knew they were in trouble. They didn't do squat about it. They didn't, Dana, neither Bob, bothered to pick up the phone and figure out what the segment was about. I mean, look at how crazy it's gotten. Just look at The View. I mean, great example. You look at The View and the nonsense they've been spewing over there nonstop. We've had to listen to it, right, for the last however many years. I was talking to someone the other day, someone pretty liberal, and she's like, why is that show on television anymore? Like, who watches that show? I don't know who watches that show. I mean, we play occasional clips for you here because it's important to understand what the other side is saying, but they never do make any sense. I mean, there was that fear that Whoopi was going on about how they were going to deport her and all non-whites.
All of you. Talking about you and us. He's not going to, say, oh, you're with a white guy, I'm going to keep you from being deported. No, he's going to deport you and put the white guy with someone else. The man is out there.
He's also... So you said recently that you thought that you, as an outspoken critic, could be a target yourself. Some people think that sounds overdramatic, but I'm right there with you. I think that he is so vindictive that he will go after, however he has to, through the IRS maybe, or even, through sponsors to get us off the air maybe, or you. Yeah. How seriously should we be taking that?
Well, so I was asked, am I worried about me? And my answer was, I'm worried about all of us. I'm no more worried about me than I am worried about everybody in the country. Yeah. I think it's bad to have somebody saying, give me as much power as you can in this country so I can use it to go after other Americans. So I can use it to go after these subhuman internal enemies and I'll destroy them. Like, that's just not a good system for anybody. And I don't think anybody's safe if that's the sort of basis on which he wants to get more power.
Remember when Nixon...
Don't worry, Rachel, he's not coming for you. Because you see, the FCC doesn't actually govern your show. Again, you're over in cable land. You know who's coming for you? Investors. Investors want no part of your $25 million salary that you allegedly are getting, which is obviously, well, clearly too much for one show a week. No, Rachel, you'll be out on your own because nobody wants to pay that money unless you can somehow deliver some ratings, which might actually require you to work 5 days a week. So Rachel's a different story. Joy, on the other hand, yes, she could be facing some challenges. The View absolutely could face cancellation. It's something that perhaps Bob Iger should have anticipated beforehand. He should have. This is like when the inmates are running the asylum, right? If you are a good manager, you read the tea leaves and you say, hey guys, let's take down the temperature. Like, this is an important thing to do for the country right now. And maybe talk about a few other things. I realize Ana Navarro, she is not going to talk entertainment news. She has no interest in talking about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. She has no interest in talking about anything Hollywood. That was what that show was originally supposed to be. Or what about health? What about health and wellness? I mean, what about, hey, here's an idea. How about a little personal finance, right? Because, maybe women sitting home watching that show at 11 a.m. could learn a little bit about balancing the checkbook, household finances, stuff like that. That's what the show was created to do. And instead, you turned it into an arm of the Democrat Party. So absolutely, Donald Trump can go after you for that. He can go after you for Jimmy Kimmel. Erica Kirk can go after Jimmy Kimmel for what he said. And I would just say, Disney, get ready, because you thought 16 million was a lot. You might be facing a whole lot more. The other thing you're going to be facing is the reality that none of you are going to be there. I don't think Disney survives this. I actually think that, I think the company survives it. I don't think Bob Iger survives this. I don't think Jimmy Kimmel survives this. I don't think The View survives this. I don't think Dana Walden survives this. I mean, already the sharks are circling, and you saw Michael Eisner, who I used to work with actually at CNBC. He had a show, it was like once a week on CNBC. I used to host the top-rated show at 11 a.m., 11 to 12 Eastern time on CNBC. And what I would say is that Eisner is like, what the heck? Michael Eisner's like, who doesn't stand up for their talent? So you see, they're getting this from both sides, right? The boycott's coming from both sides. The left is sort of freaking out now because now that Jimmy's back on the air, they want to kind of rescind all those boycott things. But I would just say, you guys, your first instinct was right. You got a lousy manager, okay? So you should be mad that he took Jimmy off. But my point being, your talent, your Jimmy Kimmel, if you can call him talent, never should have been saying those things to begin with. And if you had decent management in place, that actually wouldn't have happened. You get shareholder lawsuits. A lot of them. You got people that don't want to take their kids to Disney movies because they're so wokeified and ridiculous, and we got all kinds of characters that, we could have discussions that we don't want to have to discuss, right? With a 6-year-old. Thank you very much. You've got Snow White that just cost you a whole lot of money. You got problems, Disney. The Marvel franchise, they've ruined that one. So they've also got this. Bob Iger's got the National Football League media rights for the Hulu, Fubo, whatever TV merger, and the FCC is going to have to decide on that. If I were you, I would not really be looking to tick off the FCC right about now. But again, I'm just a sensible person that sees the handwriting on the wall, and you you can stand up for what you believe in, but if what you believe in is saying horrible things about somebody that half the country considered a hero, a true hero, if you think that's okay, we get some bigger issues to discuss, because you're obviously not a very nice person. So former Disney chief Michael Eisner, I mentioned him, right? He's publicly out there blasting Iger. Like, what the hell are you doing with the company that I gave you something great, and look what you turned it into. Quote, he wrote on X, "Where has all the leadership gone?" Suspending indefinitely of Kimmel immediately after the chairman of FCC's aggressive yet hollow threatening of Disney is yet another example of out of control intimidation. So here's the thing. Like, I actually don't think that the FCC was the one that did this. I think the fact that you had Nexstar and Sinclair pulling, that's like 20% of the affiliates, and saying we don't want anything to do with this show under these circumstances, that's actually what was the impetus to all that. Granted, Brandon didn't, pull any punches. I mean, you look at what Brandon said, and it was pretty significant. He went on with my friend Benny and said basically Kimmel's conduct is pretty darn sick. And you know what? Brandon was right.
When you look at the conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. As you've indicated, there are, avenues here for the FCC. So there are some ways in which I need to be a little bit careful, because we could be called ultimately to be a judge on some of these claims that come up. But I don't think this is an isolated incident. I mean, you go back to Representative Swalwell, and he emphasizing that Charlie Kirk's killer was a straight white male from a Republican family that voted for Donald Trump. In some quarters, there's a very concerted effort to try to lie to the American people about the nature, as you indicate, of one of the most significant, newsworthy public interest acts that we've seen in a long time. And what appears to be an action by Jimmy Kimmel to play into that narrative that this was somehow a MAGA or Republican motivated person. If that's what happened here with his conduct, that is really, really sick. And I've been very clear from the moment that I have become chairman of the FCC. I want to reinvigorate the public interest. And what people don't understand is that the broadcasters, and you've gotten this right, are entirely different than people that use other forms of communication. They have a license granted by us at the FCC, and that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. And we can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest in some changes.
So there, he said it. Okay, he said it. And as I said, the sharks are out for blood right now with former CEO trying to take Bob Iger down. He may just do it. I'll tell you, investors aren't one bit happy with any of this. But you heard what Brennan said. In other words, again, you have very different interests there. Cable's totally different. If Jimmy wants to go do his show, like Greg Gutfeld has a show that's actually funny on Fox at night, he can go do it on MSNBC, or he can do it on CNN. And you're able to do that. Or you can come over here and come up against me. I'll welcome the competition. Do you know that we have over 1 million subs now? I mean, this is crazy. I just kind of started doing this show a couple of years ago. And you guys came, and you kept coming back and coming back and coming back. So thank you for that. And if you haven't subscribed and hit the bell, please do me that favor. One of these days, we're going to get an exact time. But, for now, you're going to have to bear with me. I got 3 kids and a lot of news. It takes a lot of time to get all this news into the show, believe it or not. So you got Eisner angling for Iger. Bob Iger, he doesn't want to let go of that job. And I know, I'm giving you some inside baseball. I probably shouldn't share this, but who cares at this point? It was public knowledge. I mean, I would have the booker come over to me before I'd have him on my show at Bloomberg and say, please don't ask. Don't ask about retirement. And then I'd hear from the person who was the PR person. I forget her name. And she would always send me a note. So you're not going to ask about, succession plans or retirement or anything, right? I think occasionally I did just for fun. Anyway, he doesn't like to talk about that, even though he really ought to be planning his retirement. When he was actually retired, he wasn't really retired, so he turned the reins over to Bob Chapek. But apparently, kept his own office and used to hold big lunches and meetings with all the other executives. So the poor other Bob could never get to first base because he had Bob Iger waiting in the wings, ready to destroy him at any second until he could eventually take over again. Listen, I'll tell you, Nelson Peltz was right. Nelson Peltz, he called it. Get rid of Iger, change the company, get rid of all these stupid sequels, get rid of your wokeness, improve yourselves. Get rid of your management, clean house, start over. But, they can't do it. And so now they're facing boycotts from all sides. And isn't it just grand? John Oliver, another one over at HBO. You get the stock getting killed. I mean, as the market doubles, right? Disney's dead money in the water. So do I feel bad for them? No, and no. Because this is a guy who actually did some pretty gross stuff. Let's just consider, I know that America's rejecting him. I know the Sinclair and Nexstar, they're not going to take him back. But think about this. I mean, Andrew Colvett, who was Charlie's producer, was going on about how you had this emotional reaction from Jimmy. Jimmy was emotional about his own career getting taken out. He never apologized to Erica Kirk and to the Kirk family. He never apologized to MAGA. He never said he was wrong. He talked about how it was interpretation and this, that, and the other. And you know what? Jimmy gets to live another day, literally. And if it doesn't work out for him on ABC, and I don't think it will, he gets to go to MSNBC or CNN or, over here on YouTube, and he can do his show there. Rob Schneider, comedian, saying the exact same thing. That was not an apology, okay? That was bad. That was bad stuff, Jimmy boy. And we know you're grumpy cat, but enough, okay? You're a ratings disaster. You had a one-night stand. You looked good for one night. You got a lot of YouTube views. I mean, even I watched you on YouTube because I wanted to see what you had to say. You got like 6 million views, people tuning in, friends of mine that would never watch Jimmy Kimmel, let alone stay up that late to watch this guy, this loser. No, they watched just to see if he could do the decent thing, and he couldn't. He couldn't. So it's game over. You're getting sued. You are in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble, believe me. We've written on this at 76research.com, my company. Use code word dollar, if you're interested in investing, and I hope you are, because it's really important to take care of yourself and to take care of your family and to take ownership, right, of your own direction in life. Use dollar, DOLLAR. I would not advise buying Disney right now, but we do have companies that we like, and we do tell you, so take a look at those because a lot of them do super well. The other thing I just want to mention is, we're coming out of this cancel culture. I'll tell you, it was bad. And then, you get the left saying, oh, my gosh, we're getting canceled by the right. And it's like, excuse me, this is nothing compared to what we went through. I mean, I had friends that couldn't get bank accounts. I told you guys my own story. I had a bank that kept calling me and calling me. I have had this account since going back to like 1997, 1998, a lot of years, right? They should know who I am. And yet they would call me every couple months with all these suspicious questions. And then all of a sudden it stopped. In November, it stopped after Donald Trump was elected. So this is actually kind of an important issue. I want to bring it up. I want you to go look at this at forfreemarkets.com because under the Obama and Biden administrations, what did you see? Regulators pressuring banks to close accounts for industries and for individuals that they didn't like, people that they politically didn't agree with. And that was wrong. You know it was wrong. I know it was wrong. They know it was wrong. Well, President Trump, thankfully, is taking decisive action in this area. He's not going to let it happen. This whole debanking thing, this has to end. And so he wants your help in ending it. This is why Americans for Free Markets is thanking President Trump for all of his efforts. Together we can stand for freedom. Together we can stand against this insane cancel culture that was so horrible for so many of us for so long. We need clarity. We need consistency. We need accountability in this financial regulatory process. So please make sure that abuse never happens again. Join me by going to freemarkets.com. Again, that's freemarkets.com. Hey, what did I tell you? What did I tell you about Bongino? Don't ever doubt me. By the way, don't doubt Bongino either. He's a good guy. My friend Dan Bongino came out with a warning a couple of weeks ago, and he made it super clear that there were going to be things happening. And I spoke somewhat recently with him, and I mentioned this to him because I'm like, that warning you have, that really resonated with people. And he said, take it seriously. Take it seriously, Trish. There's more coming. So I want to play it for you because in light of Comey likely being indicted sometime in the next couple of days, I think it's pretty important. Let's listen in to Dan Bongino with my former colleague. Actually, they're both my former colleagues. Everyone's my former colleague. I think I've worked too many places. Anyway, Dan Bongino speaking with Sean Hannity about what's coming next. Listen carefully, guys. There are some clues in this. And I don't mean about the labradoodles. The important stuff is in the beginning.
Let me ask you about, are you going to be looking into, Cash and Pam, any potential collusion between the DOJ, Letitia James, the novel legal theory of Alvin Bragg, or Nathan Wade, or Fonnie Willis and the DOJ? Is that something? Has anything come up? Is there any way to determine whether or not evidence was destroyed in any of these cases?
Well, there's always a way to determine that. I don't want to comment on that specific case right now for a reason. I don't want to get ahead of the Department of Justice on that. But I want to say this. You know, the FBI obviously has the public corruption portfolio. And yes, if you are a corrupt politician out there, if you are engaged in behavior, you know what you're doing, we're going to find you. I promise. No one is going to get off. The days of selecting and putting your partisan bias on and taking care of your friends, those days are over. You know what, Sean? I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. Well, maybe outside of you and a couple of, I don't care. I didn't come here for the money. I didn't come here to make, I know.
No, you didn't go there for the money. I can tell people that for sure. No, I didn't come here to make friends. I don't give a damn about friends. I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. I got my wife, I got you, and I got a small crew of people. So I don't need any friends. If you want a friend in D.C., get a dog.
We're coming for you.
That'll help.
Yeah, exactly. Right, you want a friend in D.C., right? Go get a labradoodle like I have, because there are no friends in D.C. You've been doing this, 30 years? There are no friends here.
It's true. Well, I hope he considers me a friend. I certainly consider him a friend. But here's the thing. I mean, it's not just James Comey. Now, there's a lot of them going down. You get Shifty Shift, right, who's caught in the crosshairs of this. James Comey, allegedly. I am going to correct this again because technically it's sources. I mean, I happen to think it might be James Comey. That'd be a good source. James Comey sources telling MSNBC he'll be indicted. This is coming within days, okay? So again, this goes back to what we heard from Dan Bongino, that there was a lot coming, a lot in the pipeline. I want to go to MSNBC as they got this news in.
Three sources familiar tell MSNBC former FBI Director James Comey is expected to be indicted in the coming days. The full extent of the charges being prepared against Comey is unclear. Joining us now, MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian and MSNBC Senior Investigative Correspondent Carol Lenig. Chris O'Leary, Ashley Parker, still with us. Carol, help us understand the reporting.
So, Katie, we have some sources who say that for several weeks now, the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Virginia, and actually in offices that are potentially much further south than Alexandria, have been eyeing ways to indict Comey, and they are getting very much closer. The statute of limits, rephrase, they are arguing that Comey, there is evidence to suggest Comey lied to Congress in his testimony on the Hill in September of 2020. And for viewers out in the audience who may not be legally as nerdy as me and Ken, I'll just say that there's a statute of limitations to charge people with the crime of lying to Congress or perjury, and that's 5 years. The 5-year statute runs this month.
So what exactly is he accused of lying about, Ken?
Well, there was an...
Obamagate, Russiagate, Russia. Remember? Yeah. Remember in we're going back to 2016? They came up with that whole idea they were going to go after Carter Page because somehow they found all these people that were, targeted by literally James Comey's FBI. And he was asked about this by Nicole Wallace, who's another MSNBC hack. And he was asked about this at the 92nd Street Y, and he kind of laughed about it all and said, they didn't really know what they were doing. So they took advantage of that, and they went in and they had this preconceived notion that, they didn't want Donald Trump to win. If he were to win, they had to figure out a way to stop it somehow. Remember Peter Strzok, Lisa Page? Maybe I got them backwards. Was it Lisa Strzok and something? Well, whatever. The lovebirds, okay? And this idea that somehow we could stop it, they were going to stop Donald Trump from winning. Well, guess what? You can't do that. You really can't. I mean, you want to talk illegal, banana republic type stuff. That's exactly what we're talking about. So if he is guilty of these allegations, if he in fact was doing things on Obama's behalf to try to create a different narrative, I mean, how many times do we have to hear, not my president? For goodness sakes, they got Jimmy Carter on his last legs to get up there and say he's not a legitimate president. We had Hillary Clinton, he's not a legitimate president. He's not, he was elected by the Russians, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you understand how detrimental that was to this country? Don't you think that somebody should be paying the price because it was just so flat out god-awful wrong? I think so. Tulsi thinks so.
American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice. And yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end.
You better believe it must end. You better believe it must end. And I'm hopeful it will. I'm hopeful it will. We have some new news coming into us that I just want to bring you at this moment. It's not entirely clear why this is happening, but I can tell you my other former colleague, it's getting kind of strange, Pete Hegseth, I should say Secretary of War Hegseth, he is calling a meeting right now of all military leaders, generals. Apparently he's bringing them in to Virginia. It is not clear why. This is actually quite unusual. So we do know that James Comey is expected to be indicted quite shortly. We don't know if these two things are related, but top U.S. military leaders are being called in. They're summoned around the world. So all these military officials that are stationed around the world are being called in. They've been summoned to Virginia. This is fascinating. This week by Defense Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. So top U.S. military officials stationed around the world, summoned, forgive me, I'm trying to type and to write in real time as we get this news in, and hopefully we don't see any spelling errors, but you know what, I think you guys will all forgive me. This is an unusual thing, okay? This is a very unusual thing to see happen. I'm not sure when this has happened really in recent history before, certainly not in my career. The large number of generals who could be in attendance would include those working in conflict zones. This is, again, without recent precedent, so highly, highly unusual. It has apparently stirred some anxiety among some top military officials. Don't forget Mr. Hegseth, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War Hegseth, has fired several senior officers. So are these things related perhaps to the issue going on with Comey? Are they anticipating some kind of problem resulting from that? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't want to speculate too much. Maybe you guys have some ideas and some thoughts on this, but I think that it's important to cover this breaking news as it's quite massive right now. And a lot of friends of mine are saying this. We're also getting news that the Justice Department is officially pushing prosecutors to investigate George Soros' foundation, because the fear is that that foundation has actually put money into organizations that have been indeed quite anti-American and led to, unfortunately, some of the radicalization of some individuals. So those allegations are out there, and that's being looked at. Whether or not any of these things are intertwined at this moment in time, we don't know. But again, Hegseth is said to have summoned U.S. military brass from all over the globe for this meeting, and he is not saying why. We do have a few other things going on. We have, for example, the shutdown layoff threat. I want to get to that. I'm going to be joined by my friend Kent Strang from Americans for Prosperity, who eats, sleeps, and breathes policy. So he knows all about this CR and how we get a clean CR. I know that the administration is talking about firing massive amounts of people. In other words, in the past, right, what would you have happen? You would have the government shut down, everybody gets a 2-week vacation, they come back, they get paid, their back pay, and they're back to work. Very different this time around. This president wants a smaller government, and if Chuck Schumer isn't willing to give him a clean CR, he's like, okay, then we're going to get a smaller government one way or another. So that's also in the back of everyone's mind. I'm reading from some of your comments here. Clean house, somebody's saying, that, this is wild. Everyone buckle up. Going to be a wild ride. Take it back to the airbase. We don't know. We don't know at this point. I will work the phones, as I always do, and I will try to bring you more information as we get more of this together, again, by the live show tomorrow. But I can tell you that this is extremely unusual. I have a lot of respect for Pete. He was a good friend. I'll just tell you a personal story. When I was, frankly, you can call it whatever you want. I guess technically I wasn't fired because they couldn't fire me. I was under contract. But when Fox and I parted ways because I dared to say the unthinkable, like maybe we shouldn't be shutting down the entire country and that the Democrats might actually turn this into a political event back in March 2020. Yeah. That was a big deal. And the left pounced, and I found myself without any kind of management support. So, I was out on my keister. Fine. It all worked out in the end, right? I'm very happy over here. Believe me, I'll never go to work for anyone else ever, ever, ever again. That's my motto to myself. So remember to subscribe, share, make a comment. Every bit helps. I would say this. Pete was just one of the greatest guys, and I can count on one hand, really, the people that reached out to me, including the President of the United States, who called me at home on Saturday morning. After Fox made this announcement, I heard immediately from Pete. I heard from my friend Rachel Duffy. I heard from a fair amount of people. Tammy Bruce over at the State Department. I heard from some really good eggs, okay? Really, really good eggs. Eric and Lara Trump, Kimberly Guilfoyle, who was then dating Don Jr. And you know what? You don't forget this. Bongino, you just don't forget this, okay, guys? Because, when push comes to shove and you're persona non grata, when your friends are the ones that you hear from, okay? So maybe I can count on two hands, but it was not a ton of people. It was the people that actually believed in what I was saying and were respectful enough, and friends that were close enough to reach out. So I think that, Pete's a smart guy. Princeton undergrad, he worked at Bear Stearns back when Bear Stearns was a thing. So he had a job in finance. He's a smart guy, and whatever he's doing so with good reason. So we'll continue to watch for this. Again, I just want to reiterate this headline. Top U.S. military officials from all over the world are being summoned to Virginia, hundreds of generals for a big meeting. And it comes at a really interesting time as we have the federal government going after these groups that they believe are related to some of this domestic radicalization. It comes as we look at James Comey getting indicted, likely Letitia James getting indicted, and you have this sort of fracture, right, between state and local and federal government, where you have the likes of LA or the likes of Chicago saying, hey, we're not going to cooperate with ICE, even though Congress sets the rules on immigration. And ICE is charged with actually tracking down illegal migrants, especially ones that are criminal. and getting them out of the country. And you had these communities saying we refuse to cooperate. So things are getting very heated. And let's hope that this is all okay. All right. Let's all hope for the best, because we certainly don't want any kind of discord, but we've seen plenty of it. I mean, considering what happened to my friend Charlie, right? That tells you everything you need to know. Again, I want to reiterate that this is happening as we look at a government that could possibly be shutting down. I mean, isn't this interesting, right? So I want to talk about this a little bit, because a government shutdown is something that we've seen a lot of, and we've certainly heard lots of talk of in the past. And you know how these things go. You shut down briefly, temporarily, and then all of a sudden things like come back together, right? Well, this could be a little bit different, just saying. Big news out of the White House. They're looking at possibly firing lots and lots and lots of government workers. And you know why this is going to happen? Because the Democrats, they just can't get their act together. Take a look at this. Donald Trump ordering the OMB, that's the Office of Management and Budget, to prepare for mass layoffs of government workers. You know, and historically in the past, when you'd have one of these shutdowns, guess what? Everybody would get paid in the long run. I mean, they'd go without pay temporarily, but they'd get paid after the fact, and they'd be hired back. Well, this time, he's like, oh, we don't need them anyway. We're just going to fire them all. And Chuck Schumer is allowing it to happen. So pretty amazing stuff. Here to break it all down, my good friend Kent Strang from Americans for Prosperity. Good to see you back on the show, my buddy. Wow. I mean, Chuck kind of walked right into this one.
He sure did. I mean, the House just passed a clean continuing resolution, which means that the government would remain open for about another month without any increases in spending. But Chuck Schumer just isn't having it. He wants to spend another $1.5 trillion in spending. And so all these federal employees who are potentially going to lose their job, it's because Chuck Schumer doesn't want to negotiate with the president, pass a clean continuing resolution. And what he's really tying to is he is tying to these outdated temporary COVID healthcare subsidies. And that is going to cost taxpayers $40 billion a year, and they are set to expire because our pandemic is over. But that's what Schumer wants, and so he's going to put the livelihoods of a number of government employees at it, and he's certainly the obstructionist here because he wants that government to shut down.
Okay, I'm going to go back in time to 2020, and there was such an effort on behalf of the federal government. I mean, we saw Jerome Powell printing like there was no tomorrow, QE galore, plus low interest rates. Then you had the third stimulus check coming from Joe Biden, and you had a real effort from Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer to make sure they doubled down on all kinds of money. I mean, massive. We used to think Obama's package was big back with the $800 billion. This was over $1 trillion. So I think there's like, what, $1.5 trillion that they want to extend here. Do I have that right? I mean, in healthcare spending, and I'm just going to be honest here, like COVID's over. It's no longer March 2020. We know what happened in terms of inflation. We know that inflation in healthcare is out of control. So why would we just keep throwing money at a problem like this? It's clearly not fixing anything.
We shouldn't. And Republicans were elected to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. But let's rewind. I don't want to rewind, but let's rewind to Bidenomics. What did Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Joe Biden do? They spent $5.5 trillion in new spending, and we know what the result was. 40-year high inflation. And what did it lead to? It led to the average American family paying $11,400 more just to maintain their lifestyle. And we had the malaise of the Bidenomics era. And now that President Trump and we have a Republican Congress, they were elected to stop those things, get government back in check, eliminate the wasteful spending. That's what's got to happen here. We need to make sure that there's a clean CR passed. We're not going to spend another $1.5 trillion because Chuck Schumer wants to hold the government hostage over it.
You know, you say hold it hostage. Explain sort of what you mean by that, because he doesn't have the votes, right? Let's just be realists here. The Republicans have the House and the Senate. And
Republicans have the House and the Senate, but they're going to need 60 votes to come out of this. And so there is going to need to be Democratic support to continue to keep the government open. And so Republicans and Democrats are going to have to work together to keep the government open rather than shutting it down. But it seems very obvious to me that what we do is we make it possible where there's a clean continuing resolution as they keep the government open and continue to negotiate. But there is a solve that's a bipartisan solve that could end all of this brinkmanship on the politics.
Okay, bring it forward.
It's called the Prevent Government Shutdowns Act. And what it would do is it would say, we're going to continue to pass clean continuing resolutions. And while we work this out, there's no furloughs, there's no firing people, there's no shutting down the government. Politicians, believe it or not, have to stay in Washington, D.C. and do their job to come to a consensus to fund our government. What a novel concept.
Heaven forbid.
There's bipartisan support on this, and we could end the political brinksmanship that happens with these government shutdowns.
Is the brinkmanship at all in any way useful?
Well, perhaps there are times where there can be negotiations, but look, what do the American people want? The American people want a limited government that provides good services at a low cost rather than wondering if they're going to get the services they need. And I think we would like a government that functions well, that budgets, that do what everyday American families do. They make hard decisions. They come together. They make trade-offs.
Right.
But
to
there
help
might be
their
a reason.
family.
That's right. And we don't look at it that
Speaking
way.
of which, I mean, I got to ask you about this because this has been a sticking point in terms of government health care for people who are here in the country illegally. Your thoughts on that, Kent, and how much of a problem this is going to be in terms of the shutdown and getting some kind of clean CR?
100%. I mean, what we don't want is we don't want to continue these subsidies at all, regardless of who is on them, because they were never intended to be permanent. They were always intended to be temporary based on that COVID era, and they're set to expire. And so we're no longer in a pandemic. There's an incredible amount of waste, fraud, and abuse in these subsidies. They removed the income brackets. So now people who are making over $100,000 a year are getting subsidies. And what does that do? That harms the folks who actually need healthcare, who cannot afford healthcare, which is probably an important social safety.
Messed up. It's like, I don't know how anything could get so messed up. I mean, who do you blame? Lobbyists?
I blame our government, who continues to want to put people on the ACA, on Obamacare, rather than picking their private insurance and making reforms to allow more private insurance. We need personal options in healthcare. We don't need a government solve in healthcare. Healthcare is such an intimate and personal issue between us and our doctors, not government and insurance.
I want government out. I mean, you hear the horror stories in Europe. You hear the horror stories in Canada. People, I always say Americans for Prosperity, you guys do so much good. It's such a grassroots effort. You're looking for help. You're looking for bodies to go door to door and knock on those doors and help get the word out. And so people should go check you out at americansforprosperity.com. I know this is front and center, and this is an important time, right? You got 6 days until the government shuts down. So there's still work to be done here right now.
Absolutely. There's always work to be done. There are always issues that Americans are tackling in Washington, D.C. And if you want to get off the sidelines and get into the game and make a difference for your country, now is a great time to do it. And Americans for Prosperity is an incredible avenue for you to be able to do that, whether it's being a digital activist, whether it's stepping into one of our field offices across the country to make phone calls, to knock on doors, to advocate online. Our country is too important for us to stay on the sidelines. So come hang out with Americans for Prosperity and get involved.
Maybe you'll get to meet Ken. Hey, listen, I love all that you do. Hey, thank you again. Good to see you.
Thank you.
It was great to see him. Americans for Prosperity. Listen, we're talking about healthcare and stuff. There's obviously a whole lot going on. We have some shorts coming out on my shorts feed about some of these women making really, really bad decisions to try and I guess it's like TDS on steroids, right? With what they're doing vis-a-vis Tylenol. And I feel like a public service announcement. I don't care how much you hate Trump. Don't jeopardize yourself. Don't jeopardize your baby. That's scary stuff. It turned out back in 2017, I believe it was, Tylenol, the company itself actually, and HHS has sent this back out, they actually put a tweet out encouraging women that were pregnant to not take the medicine. Here, I can show it to you right here. Here it is. We actually don't recommend using any of our products while while pregnant. Thank you for taking the time to voice your concerns today. And that's back in 2017. So I realize like everything's gotten so politicized. This reminds me of March 2020 again, where you had people, elected officials, saying things like, well, I'm not going to get the COVID vaccine if it's developed under Donald Trump. And so it got extraordinarily partisan. And now you're seeing really sad situations with women all over TikTok saying, and again, we'll put some of this on my shorts feed because I think you should see it. They're saying that they're actually ingesting this in high quantities because they're mad at the president and they want to prove him wrong. I don't think you should ever ingest anything, right, in high quantities like that. So it's disheartening to see, but I think it's once again indicative of the challenges that we are now facing as a country, and we need to get through this. I don't know what the meeting is with the 100 generals, but I can tell you that we got a long ways to go, okay? And it would be nice if Disney would help. It would be nice if Jimmy Kimmel and The View and some of these other places would help and get us away from the vitriol. We learned today that the ICE shooting actor there in Texas seems to have been acting alone. The New York Post reporting some information on this story earlier today that I can share with you. Apparently, the Dallas shooter's family is saying that he was not a leftist radical and that he didn't hate ICE, but this is the reality is they did find these anti-ICE bullet markings according to the FBI. So again, that is a story that as we get more information, we will bring to you. But I would just highlight sort of the tragic moment that we're in right now when we have to be so politicized and you have so much hate that you would take out a wonderful young man, 31 years old, one Charlie Kirk, who just, I mean, I knew Charlie, like, you know, and I thought he was great. I put him on TV 10 years ago. I said to the producer, get him back over and over and over and over again because he was so good. But I actually didn't realize how great he was until I've gone back and I've seen all of these videos. I mean, my kids liked it. They used to watch some of the videos, but like I've been watching them and I tear up because I'm like, gosh, his breadth of knowledge, whether it was quoting scripture, whether it was quoting the Constitution, whether it was quoting actually all 13 colonies' original constitutions, whether it was quoting Latin. I mean, it was unbelievable. He was so steeped in history and philosophy and an incredible debater. I mean, a Socratic method of debate that, like, I don't think it would be rivaled by anyone. I don't think anyone that I know anyway could possibly do that. So he will be dearly missed. But I think it's an important time for our country to remember that this is not the way to solve things, right? It's just not. It never is, and it never will be. So help me God. So we are one nation, united, right? Under God. We stand for liberty and justice for all. I love that you're here. We are going to continue this crusade together. I am right by your side. You are by my side. We are going to keep growing, and our voices will be heard. Thank you so much. I love you all. I'll see you tomorrow.